Good morning, students. Welcome again. We will be starting with NCRT Class 9 History Chapter 2 Socialism in Europe and Russian Revolution Part 5. In the previous class, we discussed about the February Revolution in Petrograd. Today, we will discuss about the changes after the October Revolution, the Civil War, Stalinism and collectivization, and finally, we will discuss about the global influence of the Russian Revolution and the USSR. With no further ado, let's start today's class. We will start with the first subtopic explaining about the changes Lenin brought after the month of October. First, as Lenin promised in the April thesis, he concluded the war with a treaty. Next, he wanted to redistribute the land to the poor and he nationalized the bank in November 1917. The Bolsheviks were against the private property. The leader of the Bolsheviks party was Lenin. So, as I said, they were against the private property. So, we know that today we all have wealth, either in the form of land or house or fixed deposit or jewelry and so on. So, all these are assets, or else it is a savings for our future. And all this wealth which we have, we will be utilizing for our individual betterment. But according to Lenin, wealth should not accumulate in one hand. He was totally against the concept of private property. According to Lenin, the wealth need to be distributed equally. That should be utilized for the betterment of every citizens in the country, and thereby the country will develop. Our country will develop completely. So, according to Lenin, no one is eligible to keep private property. So, that was the first command given by the Bolshevik party in power. It means no single individual is owner of huge sum of amount. It is the collective property that all the people who lived in Russia. Land also a social property. According to Lenin, even land also a social property, and he redistributed the land. And he allowed the peasants to occupy more and more lands of the nobles. And large houses in the city are partitioned according to the family requirements. And again, those large houses in the city are given to the houseless poor people. And he banned the old titles of aristocracy. Now, moving on to the army. What are the changes he made in the Russian army? So, the first and the foremost change what he made in the army is he made a change in the uniform of the Russian soldiers. So, Lenin brought a new uniform to the army. Along with that, to bring out the variation between old and the present army, he introduced a special hat known as Budyanovka. Budyanovka means, in Russian language, it means hat. So here you can see the image of Budyanovka. So in Russian language, Budyanovka means hat. So he introduced, as part of his change in the army, he made a change in the Russian uniform, specifically in the cap. He introduced a new type of hat known as Budyanovka. Then, like this hat has been prescribed as mandatory for the soldiers. So later, he made it compulsory that it is a part of the uniform. So, and all the Russian soldiers need to wear that hat that is known as Budyanovka. He made it mandatory as a part of the uniform. So these are the few major changes he brought in the Russian administration of in the Russia, as well as in the administration of Russia. So these are the major changes he brought in the structure and administration of Russia. In spite of the oppositions from other parties, Lenin signed a peace treaty with Germany. So that was the major step taken by Lenin to conclude World War One. What are the other steps taken by Lenin? The other steps, among the other steps, the major step what he has taken was the to change the party name. So he changed the party name. It means he renamed the Bolshevik party, that name, to Russian Communist Party in November 1917. After changing the party name, he thought all the people would support him and he would get a clear major victory in the history of elections which was going to conduct. In the first election for the Constituent Assembly, November 1917, astonishingly and surprisingly, Lenin lost in the election. He thought that he will get the complete support of the Russians, and he was 100% sure that he will win in the elections. But when the election result was out, it was so surprising that Lenin lost in the election. Assembly did not encourage the participants of Lenin at all. So, in reaction to this, Lenin suspended the assembly and told that more of the Russian Soviets have still having the democratic ideologies, which is not required for the Russian good culture. So now Lenin is angry with the citizens in Russia. He after his failure in the election, he suspended the assembly, and he specified that, or else he said that Soviets, many of the Russian citizens, they still have the democratic ideologies. And according to Lenin, the democratic ideologies is not required in Russia, and it is not good for the Russian culture. And he also proposed that this election is not conducted in a free and fair manner, and he cancelled the election. So he failed in the election. So he is not ready to accept his failure. So he said that this election has not conducted in a free and fair manner, and he cancelled the elections. So in this way he took certain steps through he could not get the major support of the people, but he tried to prove that he had the support of the people. So this rejections came from the people because of his repressive policies. So now let's analyze why the people are totally against Lenin. Why? What are the reasons? Why the Russian citizens during that time, why they did not vote for Lenin? So it is the historians are assuming that the repressive policies of Lenin, that was the reason. That is why the Russian citizens during that time, that is the reason they did not cast their vote to Lenin. So the repressive policies of Lenin is the reason for his failure. So like we will recollect few repressive policies. Like he announced that the grabbing away the land of the nobles. It means he had given the permission to the to the peasants to grab the land of the nobles. So when he allowed the peasants to grab the land of nobles. So it means that resulted in gaining the hatred from the nobles. Then nationalizing the bank, and like he did not allow for individual hoarding of wealth. So all these made people to get worried. Like they such kind of policies, people started worrying. They were thinking that are they going into another state of dictatorship? The people started worrying that whether our country is going into a state of dictatorship or not. But in reality, he wanted to bring an equitable society in reality. So all the policies, according to the common people, the policies which was taken forward by Lenin is a kind of repressive policies. Every citizen cannot adjust or else digest the policies which was taken by Lenin. So few majority of the citizens, they started worrying that whether our country is going into a state of dictatorship or not. But according to Lenin, he want to bring equality in the society. He don't want like few people are accumulating lot of wealth and few, so those kind of people will come under the category of rich people, and few people will not have even food also to eat. They will come under the category of poor people. So this drastic difference between the rich people and the poor people, or haves and have nots, so that kind of difference he don't want to create in his country. So his aim was to bring equality in the society. So the peace treaty, when he signed with Germany in March, many of the political parties opposed, but still he signed the Treaty of Brest-Litovsk with Germans and concluded the World War I. So Lenin signed the treaty with Germany and concluded World War I. So after that, he found the All Russian Congress of Soviets, which became the national parliament. So that is the parliament of the country. So as the years came, he made sure that only his party would be there in Russia, and no other political party survived for a long time. And he also had a secret police force known as Cheka First, which main purpose was to punish the people, those who criticize Bolsheviks. So according to Lenin, only his party should survive in Russia. So for that, he don't want anyone to speak or act or criticize against the Bolshevik party. So to look after the citizens, whether anybody is planning anything, or else if they are criticizing the Bolshevik party, so to watch on the common citizens, are they planning anything against the Bolshevik party, he had a secret police known as Cheka First. So the duty of that secret police group is, if anyone is talking against the Bolshevik party, or else those who are criticizing the Bolshevik party, they need to punished. It means they will be arrested. Then, because of this, a lot of fear spread among Russians. So slowly, Russia turned into a single party country. So that one party is Russian Communist Party. Only this party will rule Russia. No other parties can rule Russia. So people was having that fear, and Lenin, he appointed a secret police force to arrest the people, those who speak against the Bolshevik party or else against the Communist Party. So what happened is, slowly and gradually, Russia turned into a single party. In Russia, there existed only one party, that is the Russian Communist Party. Many young writers and artists, they rallied with Bolshevik party because they thought the real socialism is being placed in the country. But many other art and architectural people could not imagine much, because they have a strict censorship into practice in Russia under the rule of Lenin. So there was no freedom at all. So all these angles, we can call Lenin as a dictator. So in some angles, to a certain extent, when we analyze the policies of Lenin, we can call Lenin as a dictator. Now let's move on to the next slide, explaining about the Civil War. When the Lenin's concept of land redistribution came, the Russian army began to break up. because most of the soldiers are from the villages. The soldiers in the army wished to go back to their home so that they will get a piece of land, because the land is redistributed. So they all wish to gain the benefit. So here it is explaining that uh, in the Lenin's April thesis, we learned that the second point is redistribution of land. So he redistributed the land. So what happened is, even the soldiers also came to know that, came to know about the Lenin's land redistribution. So they also wish to gain the benefit of the redistribution of the land. So what the soldiers in the army, what they decide is, so now they wish to go back to their home, and they also want to gain the benefit of the redistribution of land, or else the policy of, which was taken by Lenin. So to gain the benefit of the redistribution of land, so the soldiers in the army say they wish to go back to their home. So all the soldiers, majority of the soldiers, they are from the villages. So after hearing the land redistribution, slowly the Russian army began to break up, because the soldiers, they started to move towards their village to gain the benefit, that is the redistribution of the land. They want to gain a piece of land which is distributed by Lenin. So the army get deserted. Then those who are those who so later what happened is, there was conflict in the land redistribution. So those who are not supporting formed different groups. So what happened is, there are few people who are not supporting Lenin. So it is explaining that from the north of Russia, there are leaders moved to south and southern Russia and organize troops to fight against the Bolsheviks. So it is explaining that then they all formed a group, and they proclaimed that the non-Bolshevik revolution. So where they do not want any Bolshevik leader, and they don't want to accept any policy of the Bolshevik party. So then they formed an army. An army was created, like it is a red army, green army, and white army. So an a three army was created in the name of three colors. So red army, green army, and white army. So Red Army was created by the non-Bolsheviks, and the Green Army is pro-socialist. Pro-socialist means those who are supporting the socialist concept, and the white means the pro-Tsarist. They are known as whites. It means those who are supporting the rule of the Tsar. They were known as pro-Tsarist. So Red Army, Green Army, and White Army. So all these groups, they started to fight with the Bolsheviks. So the red, greens, and the whites, they all these three groups, they started to fight with the Bolshevik forces. And for them, secretly, they got support from French, Britain, and Japanese people. So all these three group of people, they started to they decided to fight against the Bolshevik forces. And then it is specifying that they got a secret support. They got a secret support from French, then Britain, and from the Japanese troops. So now let's analyze why these countries, why they secretly supported the red, greens, and white, or else why they are secretly supporting the people, or else the group, those who are fighting against the Bolshevik party. So the reason is very simple. They are worried about the growing importance of socialism. So in during that time, even all the other countries, the other European countries and all the neighboring countries, they all are aware of what is happening in Russia. So they are worried about the growing importance of socialism, and they also worried that if the socialism spreads to Europe and then to Asia, it would be a major threat to their own countries. So in other countries, still that monarchy rule is going on, specifically in European countries. So these countries, the Britain, Japan, France, all these countries, they were worried. They were worried about the what is happening in Russia. Specifically, they were worried about the concept of socialism. So they are worried that, so that is why they, even they also want to put an end to the concept of socialism. So they, that is why these countries, Britain, France and Japan, these countries gave a secret support to the reds, greens and the white. It means the groups, those who are fighting against Lenin, or else those who are fighting against the Bolshevik groups. So these countries give a secret support to the those three groups, reds, greens and whites, because the why they supported means they have a, according to them, the concept of socialism. They have the fear that if socialism spreads to Europe and other Asian countries, then it will be a major threat to their own countries. So they want to stop it and dismantle the concept of socialism in Russia itself. The civil war resulted in looting, banditry, and famine in common in the entire Russia. So after the end result of the civil war, it is explaining that the civil war resulted in looting, banditry, then and famine throughout the Russian Empire. So Lenin's policy brought back to some sorts of disturbance in the country. Now, now let's move on to the next subtopic, that is Stalinism and collectivization. Hope we all are familiar with the name Stalin. You can see the image of Stalin here. So here we will analyze the ideologies of Stalin. So under this heading, mainly it is explaining about the ideologies of Stalin. So here they have planned economy, which has been implemented with its establishment of USSR. The early period when the planned economy was initially implemented, it could not see its good results, especially in the field of agriculture. The production of agriculture collectively did not yield much result. With this, the people are completely dissatisfied, and Russia itself having a lot of problem or scarcity regarding food grains. They are facing acute problem of food grains, acute shortage of food grains. During this period, there was a conflict between people and government. The government fixed the prices of the grains, and the public has to sell the uh, sell sell the grains at the price which is decided by the government. So government fixed a lower cost, and people are expected to achieve a higher cost, and they rejected to sell the grains to the government at a lower price. During this time, the great leader Lenin passed away. With the passage of Lenin, with the passage of Lenin, Stalin took over the leadership of the party as well as the head of the USSR. As soon as Stalin come to power, he was also one of the famous dictator and also very successful leader of the 20th century. He was also a contemporary to Hitler. Contemporary means living at the same time. Now, moving to Stalin. What did Stalin do as soon as he came into power? In order to solve the critical situation, it means what they were when Stalin came into power, the situation Russia faced was shortage of food grains. So as soon as Stalin came into power, so to solve the critical situation, that is to solve the acute shortage of grains in Russia, what he had done is, uh, like he said that, so Stalin told that the rich peasants and the traders, like they should stop speculating about the price hikes, and many rich traders are holding the supplies in their go down. So as soon as he came into power, what he decided is, in order to solve the critical situation where the government and the people are in conflict, so Stalin told the rich peasants and traders to stop speculating about the price hikes, and many rich traders are holding the supplies in the go down. So he ordered the government to confiscate all the suppliers' holdings, whatever present in the country, in the granaries or in the storehouses. So here it is explaining that many rich farmers and the many rich traders, they started uh, they started hoarding the grains in their godowns. They are not selling that in the market. They are expecting, they are speculating a price hike in the future, and they want to sell the grains later when there is a rise in price. So he understood the thought of the traders, and Stalin instructed to the people that you don't need to speculate about the price hikes, and you don't have any right to store or the hoard, or else store the grains in the granaries, especially when there is a severe where there is an acute shortage of food grains is going on in the country. At this time, he did not allow the rich traders to hoard the food grains in the granaries. So he ordered the government, his officials, to confiscate all the holdings, or whatever present in the country, whatever the rich traders, whatever they hoard, whatever they accumulated in the granaries. He ordered the government officials to confiscate the grains. Confiscate means take someone's property with authority. That is known as confiscate. So, wherever the traders or rich merchants are storing the grains, that should be confiscated immediately. So, this was the first order given by Stalin as soon as he came into power. So, why he ordered means he wants to control the, or else he wants to that critical situation. He want to solve the acute shortage of grains in the country. So for to avoid, or else to find a relief for the acute shortage, grain shortage which was facing in the country, he ordered the government officials to confiscate the grains which is hoarded in the granaries of the rich merchants and the traders, so that there would not be any speculation. So the price hike would not get any extra benefit for the farmers or else the rich merchants, and the grains will slowly it will reach to the common people. So Stalin in 1928, with all the party members, he went on touring to the entire nation of Russia. So in the year 1928, Stalin, along with his all his party members, he went for a tour to the entire Russia. And what is his aim of this tour? His aim of his tour was to find out where the where the rich peasants are present, where the rich peasants. In Russian language, the rich peasants is known as kulaks. So he toured the country with his party members in search of the kulaks. Kulaks means the well-to-do peasants. They were known as kulaks. So in search of the kulaks, in the year 1928, Stalin and his party members, they decided, or else they went for a tour to the entire nation of Russia. And he want to find where are the well-to-do peasants, and then he want to find where they are storing the grains, where they are hoarding the grains. So the rich peasants, as I said, they were known as kulaks, and they used to go and find out where the rich peasants. So as I said, Stalin and his party members, they toured the entire Russia in search of the rich peasants, and they find where they were hoarding the grains, and they take the all the grains. They seize all the supplies, all the grains, so that they would not have anything to store further. The party members raided the granaries of the well-to-do peasants. As shortage continued, Lenin decided to collectivize farms. It was argued that grain shortage was partly due to the small size of the land holdings. So, according to Lenin, so still whatever he had done, he toured the whole country, and he find out where the rich peasants are living, and he seized all the granar, he find where they are accumulated, where they accumulated the grains, that also was found. And later his party members, or else the government officials, they hoarded, or else they seized all the accumulated grains. But still it is specifying that still the shortage of the grains continued in the country. So Lenin come up with another policy that is known as collectivize the farms. So it was argued that, or else still that shortage is continuing in the country. So according to Lenin and his followers, they argued that the grain shortage, why still that grain shortage is happening? The grain shortage, that is partly, to a certain extent, that is because of the small size of land holding, small land, each and every, or else the normal peasants, they have only very small piece of land. The small land holdings is, to a certain extent, that is the reason for the grain shortage. So then what happened is, after 1979, land had been given to peasants, but as I said, they were small sized farms. So according to Stalin and his followers, the small sized land cannot be modernized. The small land cannot be modernized. So to develop modern farms and run them along industrial lines using modern techniques and machinery, it was necessary to eliminate kulaks and take away land from the well-to-do peasants and established state-controlled large farms. So according to Lenin, so according to him, so this small land holding, so that was, to a certain extent, that was the reason of continuing the acute shortage of grains. So he want to uh, so he want to use the modern techniques. So for that, we cannot use the modern techniques in a small piece of land. So he want to eliminate the kulaks, or else he want to take away the land from the well-to-do peasants, and he want a large land, and that land should be controlled, and that large land should be controlled by the state, by the government. So from 1929, the government forced all peasants to cultivate on collective farms. Collective farms is known as kolkhoz in Russian language. So kolkhoz. So the government forced all. So it means from 1929 onwards, there is no individual land holdings. So they told the they forced all the peasants to cultivate on collective farms known as kolkhoz. The bulk of the land and transferred to the ownership of collective farms. So the bulk of the land that transferred to the ownership of the collective farms, and peasants worked on the land, and the profits were shared. Then many peasants resisted collectivization, and they destroyed their livestock. So many peasants were against the collectivization policy of Stalin, and so they showed their opposition against this collectivization policy by destroying their livestock. Between 1929 and 1931, the number of cattle stock fell to one third because they destroyed their livestock. So those who resisted were severely punished, deported, or exiled. Peasants argued they were not against socialism, but did not want to work on collective farms for a variety of reasons. Stalin's government allowed some independent cultivation, but treated such cultivators unsympathetically. Though collectivization was introduced with the aim to increase production, it did not immediately lead to increase in production. The bad harvest in 1930 to 33 resulted in famine, and over 4 million people died. By 1937, almost all cultivable land was brought under collective farms. While initially the peasants were given an option to join or not to join, but later it became compulsory. Thousands of wealthy peasants means kulaks. So thousands of kulaks were executed when they tried to withhold their land from collectivization. Many others were imprisoned or exiled. So many people criticized the Stalin's collectivization policy. The critics within the party were handled sternly by Stalin. They were charged with conspiracy against socialism, and they were imprisoned or sent to labor camps or executed. Then accusations were made throughout the country. So accusations means a charge or claim that someone had done something wrong. That is a word meaning of accusation. So accusations were made throughout the country. By 1939, over 2 millions were in prison or in labor camps. A large number were innocent of the crime, but no one spoke for them. Many, including some talented professionals, were also executed. So that's all we need to remember about Stalin's collectivization policy. Now we will move on to the last subheading explaining about global influence of the Russian Revolution and the USSR. In many countries, communist parties were formed on the line of Russia. It gave the world a new economic system known as socialism. The Bolsheviks encouraged colonial peoples to follow their experiment. It inspired a number of freedom movements in many other countries. Many non-Russians from outside the USSR participated in the Conference of the Peoples of the East, and the Bolshevik founded Comintern. Comintern means it is a short way for Communist International. Some even received education in the USSR's Communist University of the Workers of the East. The USSR became a great power and its industries and agriculture had developed, and the poor being fed. By the time the Second World War broke, socialism had acquired a global face. Though by the end of the 20th century, the image of USSR as as a socialist country declined. Yet its socialist ideals were respected and rethought in many ways, suiting individual interest. By this, we concluded the History Chapter 2, Socialism in Europe and Russian Revolution. Thank you, students. Have a good day ahead.